Hello, 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 everyone. Come on in. Welcome to another edition of Silhouette of a Queen. I am your founder, Tiffany Devon. I am a certified life coach and wardrobe stylist, and I style leaders in fearless fashions. So come on, yo, you already know. You already know what we do. You already know what we do. So if you haven't done so, I'm going to give you a moment to click like, subscribe, and share. So that way you can get the notifications anytime I go live. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to share this information, share the podcast with your girlfriends, your aunts, your sisters, your cousin, whoever that you know, whoever is on your page. Go ahead and use this opportunity and this time to go ahead and share this information. Listen, I had no idea that I would be doing part three of me versus me. Uh, as far as I was concerned last week when I did part two, that was just my little wrap up. I was done with it. But then this week happened. I think at this point you probably would have had to been hiding under a rock if you have not heard about, the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident. And that's what I'm going to be diving in tonight. I have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I think this is going to be a very enlightening conversation for all of us, including myself, because as I was preparing to talk about tonight, I was really reminded of about my own situation. And I really was like, you know what? Will Smith is me, okay? Because there were some times where I probably wanted to just haul off and just do some things that would have been out of character for me. But I hope with tonight's segment that with my story and unpacking my journey and being transparent with you guys and letting you see, it will paint a broader picture of what I feel was going on. Because I'm telling you, I think all of us could be like him. I had the opportunity to read everybody's posts. Like so many people were posting about it, whether it was therapists, thought leaders, just everyday people. Some people were just totally disgusted, and rightfully so, right? Because we should all be able to conduct ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to where someone shouldn't make you so angry where you're actually going up and assaulting him, because ultimately that is what happened. And so, yes, there is a level of accountability that must take place when we step outside of that. You're going and potentially could harm someone. So I really want to dive into that tonight. We're going to be talking about me versus me, part three. And if this is your first time tuning in to this segment, I'm going to recap part one and part two, just so that I can bring you up to speed so that it will tie in everything once I start really talking about the whole situation. Okay. So me versus me, I decided to talk about me versus me because I feel like all of us has a little, what I call a little me version and a big me version. The little me version is that part within ourselves that not too many people really get to see. We take this little me version with us everywhere we go. We take it into our marriages, into relationships, into business partnerships, in our work environment. There is no place that we can go where little me does not show up. Little me is that version of ourselves that oftentimes, if it was not nurtured and nourished as a kid, it will act up and show up in ways that is unimaginable. It is that version of us that is like, oh, nope, you're not going to ignore me. And I'm going to make sure you don't ignore me. So I'm going to raise my voice. I'm going to slam my hand on the table. I'm going to do all kinds of things if I feel like I'm being ignored, undervalued, not appreciated, or whatever the case may be. And so I believe that we have already entered into a space in the world where this is the way that God gave it to me, is expansion. We're becoming more of what we already are, whether that's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. If you are operating in ugly, people are going to get more ugly. If you're operating in the good, people are going to get more good. If you're operating in more indifferent, you're kind of like, whatever, I really don't care which way it goes, right, left, back, front, whatever. We're going to get more of that. So because we are in that space in the world where we're expanding, this is a space and opportunity for more good to come forth and take place. But if there's not enough good in the world, then what we're going to see continue to play out on our world stage is the negative. So it is important for people like you and I to really dive deep and do the work, so that way we can be of use and be of service to those that are around us. Because how many of you know, like, just looking around in the world, like, we need more joy, we need more laughter, we need more solutions, we need more of everything. And so this is why we're here in this world today, to be able to offer that. So that's why I have been talking about me versus me, because this is really like my own journey and my own story, my own pitfalls, my own woes, hangups, just like, oh gosh, like, what am I doing? Where am I headed to? So that's what we're going to dive into. So me versus me, part one, that's what I talked about. I talked about how I had this don't come for me thing, right? And listen, I had a PhD in it. If you came for me, I was coming for you, and I was about to snatch all of your edges, all of them, and I was going to make you feel that thing because you shouldn't have came for me. And it wasn't until therapy that God really began showing me, like, that's a generational trauma response. Like, I want you to evolve from that. You need to show up and be better. And once I began identifying that me continuing to show up like that was going to continue to cost me opportunities, I decided that I needed to let that version of myself go. And when I decided to let that version of myself go, please, your girl was tested on every level. I was like, oh my God, like, when you have held on to something more or less like a security blanket, it's that thing that you do because you know it produces and gets results. And then when you are letting go of that thing and you're holding and you're embracing something different, it was hard for me to really continue to walk and trust in a new way of being. But as I continued to move forward, I started to see, like, okay, this really is the best way for me to move and for me to operate in. All right. So part two, I talked about convergence and what that means. And I just want to recap what convergence means. It means to meet, assemble, cluster, gather, concentrate, to come together and unite in a common interest or focus, to move toward one point or one another. And I talked about why it was important for little me and big me to converge. And I used the example of, like, let's say this is little me and this is big me, and they are coming together as one. And almost similar to a marriage where it said, where the pastor will marry two individuals and say the two shall become one. You are literally becoming one, because you cannot get rid of little me. Little me has been with you all of your life. But what we are going to do when we decide and make a decision, because this is a decision, ultimately, you have to decide that this is what you want to do. God's not going to force you. He's just not. He's going to present something to you. He's going to say, this is what's available to you. You can take it or leave it. So if you choose to converge the two, you're going to get moving in unison, and you're going to allow that bigger version of yourself to be in the driver's seat, because the bigger version of yourself is the mature, healthy, and whole version of who you are. That is the version of yourself that can handle difficult conversations without shutting down. You can navigate tough situations without raising your voice, without slamming your hand down on tables to get your point across. That's little me. That's little me energy. We're not moving in little me energy anymore. We're moving in big me energy, because big me energy can handle and is equipped to handle big things. So that's what I talked about in the convergence process. Okay. So that's where we are. And I'm going to tell you why that's important, because what happened on, was it Sunday, I believe, whenever that happened at the Oscars, when Will Smith walked up the stage and smacked Chris Rock across the face, I was like most people, like, whoa, wait a minute, is this real? Is this a stunt? Like, did this really just happen? and my audio on my TV went down. And I thought, okay, something must be wrong with my TV. So I reached for the remote. I'm trying to turn the TV up, nothing. And all I hear is just seeing him mouthing the words, keep my wife's name out your mother boom, boom, mouth. And I was like, oh, snap. This is like, this must be real. So, like I mentioned earlier, I am Will Smith. I am him. I'm going to read this to you before I dive into that, right? There's a therapist that I follow on social media. His name is King J. Barnett, and he had this to say on a post that he left on Instagram. He said, unprocessed pain, grief, and anger will convert itself to rage and cause an implosion, which eventually becomes an explosion. It's imperative that we heal because when you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. Let's continue to heal, pray, and have more compassion toward ourselves so we in turn can project that toward others. Healing should be a necessity and not just an option. Okay, so let's talk about leading with emotions, the little me, because when little me is leading the emotions, you'll get what we saw happen with the Will Smith and Chris Rock situation. I want to say this first and foremost. Triggers do not announce themselves. I always say this. They don't. If they did, we would be more equipped to handle it, but they don't. And so triggers do not say at 10:05 a.m., I am going to make an entrance in your staff meeting and I am going to use this person that doesn't like you, and you know that they don't like you, and they use every opportunity to try to show you up in every opportunity that they can. And I'm going to come in with a full band. I'm going to come in with the drums playing. I'm going to come in with the flute, the harp, any type of saxophone, any type of instrument that you can think of that will make a sound. I'm going to come in and I am going to wreck you. I am going to drag you. I am going to make you embarrass yourself. I am going to ultimately make you lose opportunities. It doesn't do that. Triggers do not do that, but that's how they show up. And so a lot of times when they show up in that way, we are left to follow that emotion within us that is unhealed, that is being triggered to lead that dominant conversation and have that way. I want to be honest with you because this is something that I have had to experience and I had to walk through in real time. I was at a job where a specific leader and a coworker was triggering me. And because I am the kind of person, I can be very laid back. I'm very cool, calm, and collected. I'm not super, super aggressive, although I can be assertive, but I'm not super aggressive. And so I remember having this conversation where I was leading something, and this particular leader told me that my approach was passive. And I remember standing in their office thinking, I could just feel the inner rage within me just bubbling to the top. Now, to most people, saying being called passive wouldn't be a trigger, but I'm gonna tell you why it was a trigger for me. It was a trigger for me because all of my life being told, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too passive, you're too this, you're too that. Never once was I ever really told that these let me mention this, the fact that I move in empathy sometimes. Never once was I told those things were an asset. It was always pointed out as being negative. So when this particular leader says to me, your approach is passive, I just became angry. And all I could think of was I felt like I needed to defend myself. And I was like, oh, passive. Oh, I can show you passive. That's what my mind was thinking. I can knock all these papers off your table and I can show you passive. But the big me version of myself said, you better not do that. You want to lose your job? Do you want to ruin your reputation? Okay, I got this. And as much as that part of me really wanted to come forth and defend that piece of me that wanted to say, I'm not passive. I just choose which battles I'm going to fight. So I ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to have to get back with you on what you just said. Give me a few days. And I walked out of their office. Now, when I walked out of their office, I was still triggered. I was still angry. And that little me voice was going in like, you just gonna do that? You're not even gonna fight for it, improve. It, and it was that wrestling match that I was doing, that I was going within myself and saying like, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to stand in this place of being toxic. Let me handle this a different way. I recognize that from that point, I would be constantly presented with situations that continue to trigger that part within myself. It had nothing to do with the other people that were around me, but it had everything to do with me making a choice to see, how am I going to continue to perceive this thing? Because now we need to step into knowing who I am, knowing what I bring to the table. It doesn't matter what that person thinks. It's just an opinion. They can think you're passive, but you know you're not passive. You know you would have tore this whole floor up. They don't know that. But it was one of those things, that inner resolve that you have to know within yourself. And so I would spend months trying to resolve that thing within myself, of really just saying, you got to know who you are at all times. You got to know who you are at all times. And I was constantly pumping myself up to be like, you do not let nobody knock you off your turf. You do not let anybody tell you who you are. It doesn't matter what they think. And so even though I was having these external things coming at me, I had to always be in a space of letting big me run the show, because if I didn't, little me, she would have wrecked the whole thing. She just would have. All right, let's talk about identity and purpose, because this is going to be connected into us moving into the space of big me. Like I said, you've got to know where your triggers come from, because the more that you're able to identify those triggers and where, and like if it comes from, you know, someone poking holes at you when you were a kid, you ultimately got to make peace with that. You got to kiss that thing goodbye and not let it have full control over you, or else, like I said, you'll end up losing yourself. So for me, identifying my purpose and identifying why it was essential for me to continue to show up this way and continue for me to use it as a strength, gave me the ability to continue to forge forward no matter what other people were thinking or saying about me. Because for me, I kept recognizing that it was a fight. I was making it a fight because I felt like I had to prove something. So once I decided, it's like, this is not even worth it anymore, just drop your weapons, let it go, was when I started just really sitting within myself and saying, it's okay. Now we have this example of the Will Smith and Chris Rock situation, but I also want to point out here is a very great example of someone who knows their identity, who knows who they are, who was able to control themselves, and that is the nominee Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. All of us around the world were able to see her just have this resolve as she was able to answer these questions where people were constantly trying to tear at her character, tear at, is she really who she says she is? How was she able to maneuver through that? I mean, she has such great poise and grace. For me, it is definitely something that is very admirable. And I feel like the only way that she could have really sat through all of that is because she had a huge knowing of who she was. If she had that "don't come for me" thing resting on her, trust, it would have went a totally different way. It would have. She would have lost her cool. She would have defended herself. She would have just made a mess out of that situation. And so I think it's important for all of us to be able to even just look at pieces of her life and use it as an example of how we too can move into that space, because we have to get there. I want to also point this out. Because we are in this space in the world today, I have a question for you. How will you compose yourself when your triggers arise? We all have to think about this. You have to go into it with a end result in mind, like how you will get there, because this is contingent upon all of us going to the next level. Just like I mentioned earlier, we're expanding and becoming more of what we already are. And so if there's chaos and confusion within you, you're going to get more chaos and confusion, which I think is very interesting, by the way, because there was a post that Will had posted with a picture of him and Jada, and the caption said, "Me and Jada woke up today and chose chaos." And exactly that's what he got. So that's why I say expansion in this new dimension, we're going to get more of what we've been putting into the world. So what are you putting into the world? If you're getting more chaos and confusion, you might want to check that. You might want to see, what is it within me that's drawing that? If you're getting more joy and laughter, well, then we already know that that's what you are emanating. So that's what you're going to be drawing. I know this sounds a little bit new agey, but it's true. It's facts. You are going to get more of what is already within you. So because we are in a space where I think we're going to continue to be tested to see, where are we? You want to have like a strategy in place. So that way, when it shows up, you already know, like, nope, I'm not even folding. I'm not even giving in to that. Which leads me to the last point, ego versus humility. Let me tell you about ego. Ego stands for edging God out, by the way, because ego will drag you every time. Ego is not about serving the higher purpose or good. Ego is about itself. It's about doing what it wants to do. It will go to great measures and lengths to prove a point. But humility is the road less traveled. Why is it the road less traveled? Because humility will have you out here and it will make you appear weak, but it's not. Humility is actually a strength. Do you know how strong you have to be to know that you can take somebody out and you don't? Do you know? Like, people really don't, people underestimate people who are meek. I love this quote. I've often have said it throughout my entire life. Being humble and meek is strength under control. People don't know that the most quietest people are the ones that are the most humble, because they can take you out. And it takes a great deal of resolve within yourself to know that you can do that and don't do it. But also humility is really the answer. I want to touch on this quote that Will Smith said the night that he accepted the speech, because I think this is something that that speaks to the dual nature that can be in all of us. He says, "I'm being called on in my life to love people and to protect people and to be a river to my people. That's what I want to do. I want to be an ambassador for that kind of love and care and concern." Now, some people they weren't really feeling this quote that he said, because this occurred right after he had smacked Chris Rock. But I too know how you can want to do good in the world, but then you have that side of yourself that you're still working on. And that's the part that showed up that night. And so I think this is all a big, huge teaching moment for all of us in the world, is as to even how Chris Rock, he could have smacked him back. It could have been ugly up there. There's a lot to say, even from his stance of how he was able to compose himself in all of this. I really want to say this as I'm getting ready to close this, is that let this always be a a backdrop and a a sign for all of us to continue to come up higher. Um, as far as I'm concerned, no judgment zone here, because like I said, it very well could have been me. But the thing too is that when we are coming up higher, God always has people around us that will be able to speak life into us, that will not judge us. And that's really ultimately what it's about. I am thankful for my team and my people that I have around me that have been able to walk with me through some of these most challenging moments. Just with me even sharing the story that I shared tonight, I had people around me that were like helping me to navigate that, because it was a very challenging and tough time for me. And I imagine that, it's still not over. I'm still growing. I'm still learning in all of this. And so humility, like I said, really is the key. It keeps us in a position of not always feeling like we have it together. Some things we do have together, but some things we got to work just a little bit harder at. And so may we all continue to work harder to be the kind of vessels that God wants to use and see for the greater good of mankind. And so that he can trust us with more, so that we can have more, we can be more, we can do more when he can trust us. He's not calling us to be perfect, but he is calling us to just have a heart and a posture to be able to serve him in whichever way that he's calling us to serve. So I want to thank you guys for rocking with me tonight with Me Versus Me Part 3. Just to recap, we're going to not lead with our emotions. Our emotions, they're good. They serve as a tool for us to be able to identify what's really there, for us to unpack some things, for us to get to the root of the things. But once you get to the root of it, then what's going to be your solution? What's going to be an alternative way that you show up when those emotions come up? It doesn't mean that you ignore them, but it is an opportunity for that light to be shined on them, for you to be able to walk through it so that you can become a better version. First, and then secondly, recapping identity and purpose. That's always important, because your purpose and your identity has to be that thing that you strive for, you look for, so that you don't let anybody come in and knock you off your path. Nothing that you can look at adversity and say, you know what, I knew you were going to come. I knew you were going to show up, but not today. And last but not least, ego versus humility. Let's always continue to walk in humility. It's hard, it's tough, it's not always easy, but if you're open to it, God will send you people around you to help you to continue to walk in the light, the truth, and love. All right. Thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't done so, again, hit the like, subscribe, and share button. I thank you for rocking with me tonight. Again, I am your host of Silhouette of a Queen, Tiffany Devine, and it's been real. Talk to you later.